I'm not opposed to technology. I just think that's really low on your totem pole of importance, right? I think it goes messaging first, strategy second. I think that it goes process third, people fourth, technology fifth. Actually, I would even go as far as to say leadership and management fifth, technology sixth.
Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believed me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball.
Ladies and gentlemen, you asked. We are delivering. This is the reemergence of the Best Damn Agency podcast. To those of you who are loyal listeners, we're back, baby. The boys are back.
The boys are back.
We appreciate you. We're back. To those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. Let me tell you what you can expect. We are unashamedly the no bullshit, unfiltered conversation about all things digital agency ownership, life, and of course, agency sales. So we are going to tell it like it is. No fluff, just me asking some good questions and Joey Gilkey, the wizard, on the other end of the mic, laying it down. So I'm your host for this show, JJ Russell. My business partner and friend, Joey Gilkey, as always, will be on here with me, and we are going to bring it to you with as much value as we possibly can for the next 45 minutes. So thanks for jumping in.
I'm going to give it to you.
Joey, welcome back, man. It feels good.
What's up, bro? It feels so good to be back. We took a little hiatus. How long was our hiatus?
Like 6 months?
Jeez. Lots happened in 6 months.
I think in the course of the hiatus, let's see. I quit a business. We exploded a business. We rebuilt a business. And by we, I mean you.
Yeah.
What else? What else happened? Anything?
Spent more money on my farm.
There's always money to spend.
Bought a new truck.
Farms are expensive as hell, by the way. That is what I've learned from you is I don't think I ever want one.
Yeah, most people, if they actually sat down and talked to me about owning a farm, would probably not want to own a farm. You should have friends who are rich who have farms.
Yes, like I do. I've got a rich friend that owns a farm.
Yeah. Let's go be back, man. It's good to
No, I'm fired
get
up.
back in the cockpit. I don't have a fancy setup right now. I'll probably go back to it once we get back into the swing of things. Prove to ourselves that we're back at it. We're back at it. What are we talking about?
Yeah, we're back at it. What are you most excited about? Why rebirth the podcast, man?
Well, I think, one, we shut it down for other reasons, but many reasons, I think. But it was not for a lack of enjoying doing it. And so I think one is I just enjoy it. It's a good time. I'll probably get back to drinking while I do it. I'm just on a little health kick right now, trying to lose a little LBs, trying to get ready for summer. Mostly just was told that I'm out of shape by my doctor, so I'm actually doing it for that reason. But doesn't hurt to look good too. Dude, I'm getting strong as hell in the gym.
What's that equate to? How do you know?
I put weights on and they go up and down really well. And I go up in those weights every week, so that's usually what it equates to. I'm also
Everyone
like old
who ever
man
meets
farm
you in
strength.
person. Yeah, people who meet you are like a little taken aback.
I'm a larger human than most people would realize. Yeah, I am.
Yeah, you look well proportioned on the screen. If you're watching us on the YouTubes, you know, Joey looks like a pretty average dude, but you've also got the biggest legs of any human I've ever seen and 7 foot long wingspan and gorilla arms.
I do, yeah. Some of my proportions are like 6'2", 6'3". Like right now, people never guess my weight right either. They're like, oh, what are you, like 230, 225? Like, no, dog. I wish I was 235. I had a six-pack when I was 225. Now, I don't have a six-pack, which
Pushing
means I'm
3 bills.
No, I'm not up there. I'm at like 265 or something like that.
Oh, man.
But I'm strong as hell. So the other day I squatted 500.
Oh, shit.
Multiple times. I benched 225 for, I forgot the number, it might be 14, 13, 12, 14, somewhere in that range. And I did hip thrusters, just like humping the air. A record, 100 in a minute.
I did 100 in a minute and then went to sleep.
Dude, it's more than I get in the bedroom. I won't last 100.
Gosh, that's hilarious. Yeah, what's funny? This is embarrassing. When we were in college playing ball, I did 225 21 times, and now on a bench press, I can do it 0 times.
And you weigh the same, roughly.
And
No, you're
I weigh
less.
the same, so
You're less, right? Now, are
yeah,
you
my
less weight now?
neck. Now I now have a neck that exists.
Yeah, you have a definable neck. It doesn't go shoulders to cheeks anymore. It's good.
Oh my gosh. Well, so you already know this, and if you've listened to the podcast, you already know this. We typically kick the show off with a few minutes of banter, current events, talking pointedly about different hot topics in the world, and then we transition into business and sales. So, there's been a lot that's gone down, and I could have cherry picked any of the items I thought about. Teasing out the Bud Light thing. We might actually still go back to that because it's not even just Bud Light. Now it's Coors Light. They've got all kinds of things going on.
Yeah,
That
it's
seems to
Target. It's all
be a
of
pattern.
it.
Yep. But I thought before we talk about that, we could get into this idea of the wartime CEO.
I like it.
So you've experienced this. When shit gets hard, you've got to change your mentality as a CEO. We've got friends in the agency space experiencing the same thing. Pretty much if you follow anybody on LinkedIn, I feel like half the people that I know that own businesses are going through this, like a little bit of a downturn, just a tougher time. It's exposing things in them, things in their businesses, but ultimately it calls for this mindset shift, one that I don't think you coined it.
No.
Is there a book? Okay.
Yeah. The hard thing about hard things.
Okay. So talk to what is the wartime CEO, or who is the wartime CEO? Why is that mentality important? And then, what's that practically for people that have never thought about it before?
Yeah, I don't remember the author's name, but I don't actually remember the company that he was the CEO of in the stories of the book. But a hard thing about hard things is exactly that. It's like, hey, here's what you need to do when things are hard, and things will be hard so long as you press the envelope on life. And he has a really good chapter in there, and I think a lot of folks reference this. My mentor referenced this. I've had other people in conversations reference the same chapter. It's been something that's kind of been a mantra for me. And it's all about the wartime CEO. Like, what does a CEO do, act like, say, exude in times of war? And so when things aren't going well, when the rocket ship runs out of fuel or is running out of fuel, what do you then do? And it can really be boiled down. I don't think the book doesn't say this particular phrase, but this is a phrase that's kind of something I've been living by, which is a wartime CEO does the one criteria for success. And what I've learned is there is really, truly only one criteria for being successful. And that is, you must do what is required, right? The only criteria to be successful is that you do what success requires of you. And so that sometimes means, here's the interesting dichotomy, I think that's the right word to use, is, and if it's not, then just pretend. But there's doing what is required, right? And doing what is required is exactly what it sounds like. It is success requires you to do things, right? And you have to then do those things in order to achieve success. But doing what is required and doing what looks ruthless sometimes look identical. In terms of externally, someone looking at what you are doing, it may appear ruthless. The biggest difference really is what's your heart behind it. What do you truly believe and feel when you do it? Because some people do ruthless things because they are ruthless people. Some people just do what is required, which may look ruthless, but it's really them just doing what is necessary to keep the business alive. And so I'll kind of end it on this, but there's a chapter in that book that just talks about what does it look like to make really freaking hard decisions when it appears like there is no good decision. And that's kind of it's been near and dear to me because I've had to do it, over the course of the past 6 months or so.
Yeah. So it comes down to decision making and doing the hard thing. Kind of the takeaway.
Yeah, I would say it's discerning what are the paths forward to based on what the business required. This really stuck with me. Another mentor of mine said, good people will land on their feet. Meaning, if I seemingly ruthlessly cut off an entire department of a company, not that I've ever done that.
Hypothetically, of
Hypothetically. 3 days after Christmas. Hypothetically. Because I just didn't believe in the department anymore. And I didn't see a future for it. Those people, if I hire smart people, which I tend to try to do, they will land on their feet. But businesses do not necessarily have the same fate, and therefore the founders and CEOs of those businesses who put all their risk and eggs in that basket don't always have that same fate. So people land on their feet, businesses do not always, and so you should act accordingly.
Yeah, man, that's really good. So let's talk a little bit about the personal application. So talked about a lot that's happened in the past 6 months for you, for us. Part of it, as you just alluded to, was reevaluating an entire business model and having to make these decisions that are required that could seem ruthless. So I guess 2 questions would be, talk through the process a little bit of some of the hard decisions that you've had to make and how you arrived at those decisions. I think that's the decision-making process. So how do I weigh the options? How do I evaluate the right way to know that I'm making the right types of required decisions?
Yeah.
And how did you think through that?
So I'll give you a kind of a timeline. So for me, if you guys followed the podcast, we were shooting out like a rocket earlier last year, middle last year, 2/3 through last year. Revenue was climbing. I mean, we grew by millions last year alone, and built really fast, hired a bunch of people. I think, if I recall, it was June was kind of the beginning of the hiring. So I think we hired 14 people in June alone. And then July, we hired another tranche of like 6. And then August, we had a few. And so I think by September, we hired a few more even in the beginning of September. But we grew really fast. We installed, I had someone who bought in as a partner in the business. I had someone get bought out of the business around that same time. So we had...
Neither of those were me.
No, those were you. Yeah, this is for Apex. This is for Sales Driven Agency. Now we've been rebranded as Apex Revenue. That was for SDA, now Apex. And so we had one former co-founder get bought out. We had a new equity partner buy in. Both of those people were kind of operator type people. So they bought in. We hired a bunch of people. We installed a bunch of different departments. We implemented EOS. And we had, in hindsight, we had a people issue. We had a big people issue. And so it all stems back and flows back to me as the leader, but a lot of decisions that I made was putting people over certain decisions, departments, operations that probably didn't need to be there, deserve to be there, or qualified to be there.
Can I cut in real quick too?
Yeah.
Because I think you also had a model issue at scale.
I did. A couple things. Yeah, so what SDA did back then was we would come in, we'd build a sales operation, we'd teach you to drive it, and we'd hand you the keys and walk away. Right? So we'd come in, build out process, help you hire people. We have a recruiting branch. We would hire people for you. All that stuff would be what we would do for you. But the challenge on the back end of that was that we left people who were incompetent to drive a car that we built for them. Even if we taught them to drive, they still were teenagers, more susceptible to wrecks and staring at their phone while they drive, to use a metaphor, right? And so that model is really challenging to scale because naturally that creates a lot of problems for the client downstream. It might look good for the first 3 months. It might look good even into 6 months, but eventually they run into problems if they don't run into them earlier. And then naturally they come back to you, which then crushes what you do. And so being a startup and being malleable and fluid and always ever changing and listening to the market, you're kind of making changes in live time, making change to personnel, you're making change to departments, you're making change to org chart structures, you're making change to offers. Like all the changes happen at once which, as you know, any good scientific experiment, you don't change more than one variable at a time. But in a startup, it's not an experiment. It's just kind of like there's beakers flying everywhere and people are, freaking out, and there's money requirements everywhere, and you're hiring a bunch of people and salaries. Anyways, and so you have that all the while you're good at sales or relatively good at sales, and so you're scaling and selling different offers and different price points and different points of contact for each of those offers, because you have legacy clients over here, you have version 2.0 of legacy clients over there, and you've got your new offer over here. And so I got into this shitstorm, if you will, and that's a gentle term, for where we got to as a business. And so, and I kept pushing along, pumping energy into it, trying to grow it, trying to solve it on the fly. And then it was probably, I think it was December, it kind of just hit me that, one, not only do we have a broken model in terms of what we deliver for clients, because clients sometimes suck. At least I set them up to suck. Well, they sucked, and then I set them up to suck. Because they didn't have proper leadership. But not only that, but I also was perpetuating a sales model in my business that worked earlier that year, but because of the way that things shifted in the market, was becoming less and less profitable for our organization. So our expenses kept climbing. Our revenue was climbing, but our expenses were climbing at a rate that was nearly outpacing our revenue, right? And so by, I think, January, we started to become unprofitable. Early January, maybe even late December. Started to become unprofitable. So I started saying, I kind of got into that Wartime CEO, and we had a leaders retreat in December. And at that point, I literally cut off the entire leg of my company that was our sales department, 9 people. Which is somewhat of an ego hit, considering we're a sales organization,
Yep.
And so for me, that's just part of the wartime stuff, is like, yeah, this is an ego hit, but this is just what is required right now. Is I built a model that has turned unprofitable after being profitable for a while. And I could either continue to perpetuate that, or I can put an end to it and believe in myself and the team that I have remaining to rebuild the right way. So
can I ask you a follow-up question to that real quick? So you're talking about this kind of unfolding process of you figuring out, hey, I've got some wrong people in the wrong seats. My department's not operating, the sales department's not operating like it used to or needs to from a profitability standpoint. We've got some process issues in how we engage with clients, or some model issues. So there was just things you were uncovering. And finally, you had to make like some really, really hard decisions to basically
and it kept going.
nuke that version of the business.
Yeah.
And keep the core tenets and just rebuild towards something new. My question is this, and I've never asked you this, so it's interesting. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, Alex Hormozi came on the Best Damn Agency podcast.
Yes.
And those of you listening probably know who that is. Pretty cool that we had him on before he rocket shipped, or as he was rocket shipping. But he told you kind of one-on-one after the call, like, hey, your business is awesome. I would make an offer. I'd want to buy it, but you have a flaw in your model.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if he wanted to buy it at the moment, but yeah, he and I text back and forth. We messaged back and forth.
Or like it'd be an attractive business to buy down the road, but he said something like that. But then he said,
it's very unique.
A model flaw.
He loves the idea behind it. He loves the problem that it solves. But he goes, honestly, because I was asking him scale questions, and one thing that I learned is that I was trying to scale a business model that was physically unscalable for a number of reasons. And maybe that's a limiting belief, but at least in my attempts over and over and over again to figure out how to scale a model, my goal was to, and still is, right, to probably build this to a point where I can sell this for somewhere between 30 and 50 million is my number. But Alex was right. I mean, he just flat out told me, because I think you have a broken business model to scale. And I didn't really believe him. You know, when he first, I was like, he doesn't know. He doesn't know my model. And funny enough, play it out a year and a half later, and sure enough, the shit broke. So
my question, I guess, is now having seen that happen and unfold, do you feel like there's anything that you could have done differently, wish you would have done differently to have like heard that information from him the first time and really dug in and evaluated? Like, were you stubborn? Were you moving so fast that you didn't actually give credence to what he was saying, or did the alarm bells just weren't going off? Like, what was it that made you just kind of keep moving full speed ahead?
I think at the time it was just working really well.
Yeah.
And part of me was like, you know, it's the whole what got you here won't get you there. And it's really hard to learn that unless you've done it or unless you're humble enough to hear it from someone who's done it. You know, and I think for me, I had to learn myself because I hadn't been to that level yet, both in revenue, employee count, all the things. You know, what would I have done differently is I probably would have realized that he's actually really intelligent at the time. And I probably would have asked more questions. And I don't know that Alex would have given me much more of the time of day at the time. He was starting to, when he and I was having that specific conversation was when he was on his circuit and like absolutely crushing and becoming like the biggest content creator in the business world, like overnight. And so at that time, he and I were just messaging, and I probably wasn't going to be able to get him on a call anymore unless I was serious about selling, which I wasn't at the time because I couldn't get what I wanted. But I wish I would have heard him, and instead of my ego just saying, no, I'll figure it out and I'm doing fine, I probably would have went and asked more questions of people. I would have asked him more, but I would have asked more questions of people who have solved it, you know, in this model. A project-based company solving a very performance-based problem. That's probably what I've done. That's at least what I've done differently a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
No, there's other things I would have done differently in the past 6 months for sure.
Yeah, you did those things. You made a lot of those decisions eventually. All right, so turning this around to the audience, you know, if there's people who are in their agency, you know, it is wartime. It's evident, which you could argue all the time is wartime, right? Like we should keep this mentality of being willing to step in and make hard decisions every day, but it becomes more clear and more necessary when business gets hard. What would you encourage our listeners to do? How can they evaluate themselves? How can they take steps towards being more of a wartime CEO?
I think part of it has to do with what do you want for your life? What do you want for yourself? I think when you get clear on that, the lens in which you look through is a lot clearer to make decisions. And so I think if you are unsure, and I would say that I have been unsure, I was unsure, and I went back and forth and flip-flopped quite a bit over the course of past 2.5, 3 years on what exactly it is that I wanted in life and why I wanted it. That's the other thing is not just what do you want, but why do you want what you think you want. Then that helps you make a lot more decisions. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is I think, you know, and this isn't even for like a mastermind pitch as much as just like, I think that you should put people in your corner, whether it be mentors, whether it be coaches who've been there and done that, whether it be masterminds with people in there who are doing what you want to do and have a why that's similar to your why. I think it's important to ask for feedback. I think I ask very well. I think I don't necessarily apply the advice given to me the way I should all the time. And so if you're going to ask, hear, and when you hear, listen, and when you listen, like, then I think you should evaluate through the lens of why do they have that opinion and why does it rub me wrong? And I would say if they've been there and they've done that before, it's probably wise of you to at least heed their cautions and heed their advice. And then I think you just got to get in the mindset of like, you've got to have self-belief. You know, the wartime CEO doesn't go to war if he doesn't believe that he can still go home, you know, at the end of it and win.
Yeah.
And so otherwise it'd be much easier to roll over, spend more time in the mastermind. Like I'm still going to make solid money more than 99.9% of the world just doing that. But it's like, I think I had a belief in, I know I can strip this shit down. I know I can beat it up. I know that I can reform it and make it what I want it to be. And then I know we're going to get back on the right page because I've done this before and I'll do it again. But now I'm just going in with the learning lesson. So You have to have self-belief.
Nah, that's cool. I love that. It's a great.
We've done it, and we're doing it. It's great.
Yeah. You have effectively pivoted your model and are regaining momentum, which is amazing.
Right.
All right, before we jump in and start talking sales strategies and stuff, you made the soft pitch already, but why don't you tell people more about the best damn agency mastermind?
Yeah. Well, we've said this before, and it has not changed since we said it 6 months ago. But when we set out to build the best damn agency mastermind, we set out to build a mastermind that is one of one. There is no one that can really contend with it, and I think that we've successfully done that, and that's proven by a track record at this point. I'm not even going to pitch you on the mastermind. It's expensive. It's very expensive. I'm going to go ahead and tell you now. It's probably somewhere between 30 and 40 grand at the time of listening just to be in the mastermind. There's criteria. You've got to be doing 7 figures or 8 figures in revenue. You've got to be an agency CEO. You've got to have a desire to grow both as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, but also as a person. And so I'm not going to pitch you on the mastermind. If you want to go apply for the mastermind, have a conversation, go to bestdamnmastermind.com. Feel free to do that. But what I would want to put in front of you is if you want to put yourself, and I just mentioned this, around people who are going to challenge you, environments that are going to shape you. We're doing things a little bit differently this year in terms of introducing people to the mastermind, somewhat letting them trial it without having to actually jump into it. And so we are doing our retreat that we do twice a year. We're doing it pretty big. We just got back from Tahoe in, when was it, April? Got back from Tahoe in April. It was epic, per usual. But we have our next one already planned, secured, signed, sealed, delivered, and paid for in Palm Springs, California for November 7 through 10. And so what we're doing is it's members only, and then we're going to have a small allotment of guests that we allow to come. You've got to fit the criteria. You've got to pay a decent amount to come. But you're going to get into an environment around people who are already doing it, people who have built a brotherhood, built community, solved big problems together, already accelerating their agency's growth, walking through hard times as a wartime CEO in community. And you get to taste that without having to jump in full, feet. So, or both feet in. That's what I was going to say. Palm Springs, we've rented out an entire block of these mansions. It's pretty sick. We're next to the polo fields where they do Coachella. And we are flying in 3 amazing guest speakers. We've got guest speakers who've trained Olympians and Tiger Woods in mindset and performance. We've got an agency owner who's currently doing between 80 and 90 million in revenue, not value, but revenue per year. And we also have a holistic health and wellness coach who helps dial in the body, the mind, and everything that has to do with your physical health. And so, yeah, I don't really know where to send you guys, but shit, reach out, I guess. Do we have a call to action?
Yeah, go to bestdamnmastermind.com and apply and say that you're interested in Palm Springs. That's what we got right now.
There you go. Yeah, it's not even
we'll
open
make it
to
more
the public.
formal. Yeah.
But I think what are we gonna have? Probably like 7 spots tops for guests.
Yep, 7 spots for guests. About 30-ish members should be really
35
awesome.
members by then, probably. That'll go, and so we're gonna have we're gonna have 45 total people there, and that's including JJ and guest speakers, myself, private chefs, the whole 9 yards.
Check it out, bestdamnmastermind.com. It's gonna be amazing. All right, let's turn the corner into sales. That's what
Let's
we promised.
do it.
So we've talked wartime CEO. Things have gotten tight. Budgets have gotten tight. People are struggling to retain clients or struggling to earn new clients. And so you've got this weird paradox where people want to cut spend on sales and marketing, and yet sales and marketing is exactly where you need to invest. So my first question is, how do you think about this when the impetus or the gut reactions to go and just cut your marketing spend or cut your sales department down? How do you think about it?
Yeah, I always find this super interesting because I think that we've all heard, or if you haven't heard, I will tell you, is there is the entire market, right? And there is always 3% of the market that is buying. There's always 40% of the market that is persuadable to buy. There's always, I think it's 30% that are interested in the future, but not right now. And then there's the remaining however many percentages of people who will never buy because they're just never going to try to solve a problem that you provide the solution for. And so when people start pulling back money, what that essentially tells me is you don't know how to find where that 3% is now. And a lot of that has to do with because you aren't in the market enough. You're not getting data back from the market on what's happening, who's the new buyers, et cetera. I mean, it's no different than real estate, right? A lot of multi-million and billionaires have been created through real estate, through recessions and hard times. And it's those people maybe weren't investing the same way that they were when times were really good because they were storing up a war chest for when times were really bad. So there are people who want to buy things on discount and buy up market share on discount so that they can explode in the next 10 years of good time. And so what you have to do is you have to decide with yourself that there is 3% out there that we know are buying and there's 40% that we know we can persuade. How am I going to get in front of them? I'm not going to do it by hunkering down and just hoping it comes to me. Nobody's going to come looking for you. And nobody's going to come help you either. I'll tell you that now. And so you have to make that decision to push into, whether it be with money, with time, with energy, or with people, into solving that problem. That's one thing. The second thing is a lot of folks don't have success. Let's just take outbound, for example. And this has been a big revelation for me over the past 3 months or so. It's a strategy issue. It's a people issue. It's a management and leadership issue of those salespeople. But what I think is the one key to succeeding with outbound or with anything for that matter with growth is you have to have message market fit. Right? There's product market fit. There's message market fit. And I would say most agencies all have product market fit. It's proven. You have competitors. People have bought from you before. But message market fit is one of the big things that you have to commit to figuring out. Because when that becomes clear, then the channel viability becomes clear, like what channel should I be pushing on, et cetera. And in order to get message market fit, you've got to talk to the market. So those are my two biggest pieces of advice. Know that the buyers are still out there and know that you've got to get message market fit.
As you're doing that, your pockets are tight, buyers' pockets are tight, do you get more scrappy? You know, like, do you have to change your approach in terms of where you're spending, how much you're spending? Does your strategy change at all?
Yeah.
In times where it's, you don't have as much cash?
Well, I think oftentimes we have more cash than we think we do because we're typically spending money on stupid shit we don't realize we're spending money on, right? And so, like, one of the things that I've done over the past 3 or 4 months is I've radically, like, I'm just not afraid to cut shit. I'm just not, ever. And I don't have any attachment to it, after it's cut. And so I feel bad about it. I give myself like 24 hours to feel it, but then I'm just kind of like, well, it's over, and they're going to land on their feet, or this software, I never needed it in the first place. And so part of getting scrappy is go find money where money is potentially able to be found already in your organization that you're just blowing out the window. Every $49.97, $497, $1,000 software that you're using, like, look at your utilization of it. Are you actually utilizing the tool? Right? And if you aren't using the tool, delete it. If you are using the tool, can you optimize for it and have either less seats in the tool and share resources, or can you have can you find a different tool that does the same thing for less price, and go find the money there? That's the first thing. Second thing, cut people.
Real quick, one thing. So we can't go past this without saying you just set the internet on fire. You just set LinkedIn on fire.
I did.
At the time we actually released this episode, you're going to have to go back and dig through Joey's post to find this one. But this one, I mean, like 500,000 people engaged with this or had impressions, thousands of comments, all because you added a handful of software providers.
Yeah.
And then proceeded to say 80% of your tech stack is trash and you should cut it.
Yeah, I basically made a post about you should delete 80% of your tech stack today. And then I basically tagged 4 of the biggest players in the sales tech world: Salesforce, Gong, 6 Sense, and I forget which other. Oh, ZoomInfo.
Dude, people
I tagged
were
all
raging
companies.
on you.
Oh, dude, it was amazing. I had some people who loved it, some people who hated it. It's the whole purpose was to just get attention. And but the premise is true. Like, oftentimes I think that we've gotten to this place where we just spend money because we think that it's how we solve problems is through technology. And And I'm not opposed to technology. I just think that it's really low on your totem pole of importance, right? I think it goes messaging first, strategy second. I think that it goes process third, people fourth, technology fifth. Actually, I would even go as far as to say leadership and management fifth, technology sixth. When you have the first 5 in place, then you can try to add little layers of technology so long as they make you efficient and effective. But what you'll find is you can cut tens of thousands of dollars a month in software in some cases, which is what we did. And
so you cut expenses with tools, and then you were about to say people were next.
Yeah, I think you just do. Here's a really good exercise that I think could radically change the way that you view investing in your people. A lot of people have these W-2 employees. We pay them a nice hefty salary in a lot of cases. I'd like for you to reframe what that person is to you. Let's pretend they're a contractor. Let's pretend that they have handed you a scope of work of what they're going to do for you. And that scope of work is exactly what they're doing for you right now. And you have to they slide a contract across the table and say, I want you to sign up for a retainer. I want you to pay my retainer of $7,000 a month or whatever your salary equivalent is. And then I want you to ask yourself the question, would you be excited and would it be necessary to pay this retainer? And I would say in 50% of the cases, you're going to decide this person's not worth that. And that's ruthless.
Just like this crazy objective framework.
It's a reframe. It's a complete different reframe of like, I wouldn't pay a vendor or contractor that retainer, but I'm okay just keeping these people around on an essential perpetual retainer, even though I don't see the value in it. Why? Because I love my people. This company's not going to exist soon. Like how much do you really love someone? Like I said, you hire good people, they'll land on their feet. So I think that people hold on to people way too long. And I think if you can reframe how you think about employees and look at it more like retainers, then I think that it makes it a lot easier to make cuts and decisions. And that goes for a lot of things. So
yeah. No, that's really good, man. I love that. I love that as like an assessment or some kind of activity you can do with your leadership team. It'd be fun to sit down and just say, hey, let's take our 20 employees and look through their salary through this lens. Interesting.
It's really, really challenging.
So we've talked, cutting expenses. You talked about just kind of like reshaping the way that you're thinking about sales and marketing to go after the people that are still buying. Let's talk though about sales methodologies, right? Like what actually works. And so that's great. We've already hit on LinkedIn. You've set LinkedIn on fire multiple times. One of them though was this Joey versus Ryan.
Oh yeah.
This game that you guys played. And so a good friend of ours, Ryan Reiser, he is like the cold call king of the world. And his whole, I'll let you sum it up, but basically he's got a methodology that he's very bought into, or an approach to sales that he's very bought into. At that time, you were pushing something that felt, other than. I think that was maybe the perception that a lot of people have is like these things are devoid or diverged from each other. They're totally separate.
Right.
I think you've reached a point where your thought process or the way that you would explain it is no, it can be both and. So sum up what the competition was, what Ryan's position was versus yours, and now how you're currently thinking about sales strategy and what works.
Yeah, so Joey versus Ryan was this LinkedIn semi-viral challenge that he and I issued for one another. And that was basically like, hey, head to head, I'm going to outperform you in sales. Meaning I'm going to get more opportunities, I'm going to get better opportunities, I'm going to close more revenue. And so we decided to give it like a month. It also happened to be a month where a lot of shit hit the fan. So like he and I both only kind of made it halfway through the month, but it was still very telling. And both of our methodologies work. So to explain his methodology, he's got what looks from the outside more like a spam your TAM approach, right? High volume of cold calls and so on and so forth. It's not that, but it looks that way. And then I've got my approach, which I would call more of like an infiltrate model, which is more about account-based. How do we get very highly strategic about the top 100, 200, 300 accounts we want to go after, and how do we orchestrate a one-to-one specific campaign for each account as opposed to creating one campaign with 1,000 contacts in it, which is what most people do. Well, what's funny is Ryan's approach isn't exactly what I thought it was, right? It's what he does is he segments lists very, very well. And when he segments those lists, he knows who picks up the phone. and that's his whole thing. So we do have things that I still don't agree or I differ on with him. But his whole thing is like, I just want to hit people with where they're going to. I'm going to take the right message, so back to messaging, to a channel where I know they answer or I know I can interact with them, and I'm going to get a response from them. Very simple.
Okay.
I'm more like, I'm going to take every channel. I'm going to take a very solid message with a very proven target account profile that I know I can sell to, and I'm going to work it that way. And though I think mine proved to be more effective completely downstream, his and I approach both worked in different ways, which was really, really eye-opening for me and for him, which is cool because now we partner on like how I do growth versus how he does growth, and we both kind of share in our approaches. And so that's what's been really cool. And so we did this competition. We both performed really well. We both got really busy and couldn't really finish it, but we both landed some big deals just in that month doing it together. So that was what was cool. I don't know if you had what was your question behind that? Yeah. Like, what do we do?
No, okay, so that's great. Yeah, so you've got Ryan's methodology, which is it's one channel, it's a lot more volume, and it's basically optimized for having as many conversations as I can have on the phone with my targeted audience, right?
He calls it above the funnel, which I really like. So there's like top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. And so oftentimes we tend to just start at top of funnel, but what he's talking about, and I guess we all kind of start above the funnel, but his is above the funnel in the sense that he's not making thousands of dials, right? He has built through Phone Ready Leads, which is his company, the ability to take leads, and he has an offshore team run by some tech-enabled service. They are able to do what's called above the funnel work, which is they make all these calls and they make passes through this list, and they determine who percentage-wise is likely to answer the phone. And then they just hand Ryan that list of what they call P1s or priority ones. These are the people who we know answer the phone. Statistically speaking, you're going to talk to 80% of this list if you call them 5 times. And then he just focuses on dials to that group. So he will make 10 dials in an hour or whatever, but he'll have 4 conversations, 5 conversations. Whereas a typical sales rep will make 100 dials in a day and have 4 conversations, 5 conversations. And so that's where I think it differs. And that's where, it was pretty eye-opening for me, where it's more about what is the above the funnel work that we do to better set up our top of, middle of, and bottom of funnel sales. Right. And in our world, Infiltrate, it's about the research you do. Right. His, it's about above the funnel dialing to segment. Mine is more about research, segmenting through research. And we both kind of do it in different ways. And then that informs how we do our outreach. But it really comes down to the research.
Let's dissect yours a little bit. So Infiltrate, it's about the research. It's about going deep with fewer accounts or getting more strategic in your approach and leveraging multiple channels. What channels are you on? What types of research are you doing? How are you actually executing this?
Yeah. Well, the first starts with what we call your TAP, right? So your TAP is your target account profile. So we've all heard of ideal customer profiles. TAP is just a deeper level of that. We do a lot more demographic, firmographic research, but then we do a lot of psychographic. So what philosophy does this company have right now? Are they growth minded? Are they exit minded? Are they in survival mode? Are they in maintenance mode? What are their internal struggles as a company? What are they feeling internally? Whether it's employees or org or software or whatever profitability, or what are external struggles, market conditions, whatever it might be, all the way down to what content are they reading and consuming, what are they probably searching for on Google, like buying intent, those types of things. You do all of that and understand what the profile is, right? The actual the fictitious makeup of these accounts, and then you go find those accounts. Who are accounts that look like this? And then from there, you do what we call a tap map, right? It's where you take your target accounts and you actually map out the 2, 3, 5 contacts who either make the decision or influence the decision. And then from there, you do really deep research, starting from the top down. So you look at your key buyer. Usually it's, in our world, it's the CEO, it's the founder, or it's the CXO of some sort. And you go deep on both their professional and their personal. So you open up the About page on their company website. You open up their LinkedIn personal profile. You looked at other social media accounts. You look at articles, any alerts that have popped off from either their personal or professional life, and you just data dump as much as you can to find what are the few things that I can throw a hook in. And then you do it for the next person. You do it for the next person. Do it 2 or 3 times. And then sometimes you will find, okay, this is the person I have to go after in this account. Or, hey, it would be advantageous to go after both of these people at the same time separately in this account, and then do a tactic I call weaving, where you bring them both together on the same outreach strategy. You CC them both in the same email, or you put them in a group LinkedIn message or whatever. Mine's just a lot of research. It's a lot of heavy lifting, but it's one of those where I can go after 50 accounts and I can get into 20 of them, which is statistical anomaly in any other strategy.
So depending on the life cycle of any given agency or the maturity of their sales motion or sales operation, like let's say that they're a 2 to 3 year old agency that it's just been founder-based sales for the longest time. They have, very immature go-to-market strategy. Yeah. Their marketing doesn't exist. It's just like referral-based stuff. Is one of these approaches better leveraged for that person than for the 10-year-old agency doing $10 million with a more robust sales operation? They've already got salespeople in place. Like, does the life cycle dictate which approach you should try, or are both of these something that people should lean into?
I think it's both. I think that understanding your TAM, right, your total addressable market, and then understanding within that TAM, like, who are the target accounts. I think it comes down to what do you sell and who do you sell it to determine what strategy is the best, right? If you have a really, really large total addressable market and you have a fairly well-proven product market fit and you have solid messaging that you've proven on a couple different channels, then it probably makes sense to have a little bit more volume in your play. If you don't have proof or you don't have data to back up any one strategy, but your ticket price can justify lower volume, meaning you have a higher ticket price, then I would probably start with a more account-based sales approach. And I would try to get into conversations in a more methodical, higher trust-building approach, which is what I would call infiltrate. And I would start there. But what we have found and where we land is I'm actually doing both now. And so I'm taking, what is Ryan's approach, which is more of like above the funnel segmenting. And I'm taking it a step further than Ryan. And so just to kind of let you guys, open up the veil, I'm happy to talk to anybody about this if you want to book a call on apexrevenue.com. But what we're doing is pretty different in the sense that we're going to send an entire list off. We're going to get that list segmented into who we know answers the phone. And then we're going to spend our first 4 to 5 touch points on the phone with those folks because we know they convert there. Well, that's only going to be 30% of that list I send off. And so the other 66, 70% of that list, we're going to take a more infiltrate approach. And we're going to start more email and LinkedIn heavy with a lot more research, a lot more methodical outreach. And we're not going to bother with the phone with that group because we know statistically speaking, they won't answer the phone in 5 dials. And so then for those who, the 80% that we have conversations on, we might determine that, hey, the phone wasn't the best place to have that conversation. It didn't go well. If there's still a room, then we throw them into an infiltrate model. And so it's really just it all comes down to strategy. So, yeah.
No, I like, so you basically in that last summary have created a process through which you put prospects through all of the strategies that we just talked about in a way that's attempting to capture the
that's
most
cohesive
ears possible.
Yeah. People are like, oh, what kind of technology all is involved in that? Not much.
Very little.
It's messaging and it's strategy and it's 1 or 2 tools.
They want to know. People want to know. What are the 1 or 2 tools?
I've become CRM agnostic. We're still in HubSpot, but you could freaking use Pipedrive or Salesforce. It really doesn't matter to me at this point. And I use 1, maybe 2 sales engagement tools. We're considering a second one that we might use for email. But as a whole, Apollo.io is 100% sufficient for 90% use cases. And so what we will typically do is build lists on Apollo, have that list sent off for the above the funnel type of work from PRL. That then will be segmented The people who we know answer the phone go to the phone team. The people who we know don't answer the phone, we're going to go infiltrate model, and we're going to go heavy on email and LinkedIn. Very methodical, very personalized outreach. Nothing is templatized, at least not the whole email or whole LinkedIn message. And then we might flip-flop those. And so that's our approach. That's our tech stack. It's very, very simple tech stack. One thing that I learned building a much larger team very, very quickly was simple scales, complex fails. The more bodies you add, there's another nugget in here somewhere. I don't want to get too detracted, but the more bodies you have on the team, the more problems you naturally have. The more bodies you have on the team and the higher volume of sales outreach that you do, the more drag on your expenses. So you got to imagine if you do a high volume sales approach and you have a large team, that's a really big data cost. Well, every single sales rep also has to have a seat on every single license that touches sales. So even if it's $97 a seat, you have a team of 9, well, it's $1,000 just for that tool. And $1,000 for the next tool. And then HubSpot's, $500 for Sales Pro, but then you add $60 or $50 per user after that. And so right there, you're looking at $600, $700. And so you get to this point where the model becomes unprofitable, which leads to my other little nugget I was going to share is I am learning and I have learned that when market shifts and costs increase, the approaches that you might have fallen in love with may not be viable. So what I mean by that is I was anti this for years, and then I fell in love with the SDR model, right? You have SDRs, younger sales reps, banging on the phones, doing the emails, booking calls for account executives who are, their entire job is to nurture and close. Well, as we all saw the shift in the marketplace from employer leverage to employee leverage, sales reps required a lot more money. They required higher base salaries. They required bigger comp models. They required more tech stacks because, this tech stack at this company is more sexy than this company over here, so I'm going to go where the tech stack's better. So then they get entitled to a tech stack, they get entitled to more money, and then next thing you know, you've got 9 of them, and they're all overpriced, under-delivering, or they're not delivering at a profitable level, and so then the SDR model breaks. And that's what I'm kind of hinting at from 6 months ago was we started to get unprofitable because of the shift in the market.
Yep.
And that was my mistake. Dude. And so I've gone back to full cycle sales reps, lean tech stack, more account-based approach, but layering in very strategic other channels. And it's way more profitable. Way more profitable.
Well, if you've been with us, if you've been rolling with us from day one, you know that you can come back here next week to find out more about that kind of stuff. Find out more about how Joey has rebuilt a profitable sales operation in a down market. If it's your first time joining us, we appreciate you. We know that the most valuable thing that you can give us is your time and your attention, and so we want to give max value every week here on the show. So as you found out, sometimes it's going to be current events and talking shit about life, and sometimes it's going to be talking about leadership and Bud Light. Yep. Sometimes it'll be talking about sales. Every time you'll get something about sales. So we appreciate you. We will be here every Friday for our weekly release of the Best Damn Agency podcast. We are glad to be back. Rate, review, subscribe. Check us out on YouTube. The video, I feel like, is just kind of fun. Maybe one of these days, Joey, we can do a live show. I don't know.
It'd be fun.
Just thought about that.
It'd be cool to do one
cool.
at
I'll
the
play
retreats or
idea.
something.
Yeah, I'd like that. But yeah, we appreciate you. We'll see you here next week. Joey, sir, to you. Glad to be back, man. Good to see your face.
Boys are back. Peace.
Back in town. Later.
Whoa! Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah.